Today I'm going to talk about asset classification. And I believe this is essential because if we're talking about the process of tokenizing asset, we have to go with the fundamentals. So what are the different types of asset? What is their difference? And then how we can classify them. So I'm going to propose you this that will allow us to understand a little bit better what is happening and what is going to be the future. So the first element is that financial assets. And the number one are equities. So equities could be divided in two buckets, the public bucket and the private bucket. So let's talk about the public bucket. In the public bucket, we find the stocks of companies. Yes, each time you buy Apple stock, Tesla stock, or Netflix, you're buying a share of a company that has already been public through a process called an IPO, initial public offering. So that means that in the US specifically, this company is available to the world. Most countries around the world have been building their stock exchanges. For example, the UK stock exchange was very famous 100 years ago, but now it's in downwards. Now the number one and for the past 50 years has been the US. So now big companies around the world looking to launch in the US. There are other ones very interesting, such as the Indian Stock Exchange, where a lot of Indian companies are moving from the States to India to launch. So that's very interesting. Then you have the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and that's it. Most of the stock exchanges are very small in terms of the valuations, but this is the key thing. They offer one element called liquidity. So liquidity is essential, and that's the reason most of companies and people invest in public equities. So the interesting thing is how could this be tokenized? Well, how will allow the process of buying stocks at a cheaper and faster way. That's the key element. Then you have private equities, which is most of net worth around the world because this is the private business. Like when you go and see the store in front of your house, that's a private business. When you go and buy new furniture, that comes from a private business. So most of the network is concentrated on the owners, investors, and sometimes employees of those businesses. So private equities are connected directly with each country. So if you launch a company in the UK, for example, you issue shares. And those shares are owned by different types of people. Now, what was going to happen in the future is that people will be able to have a private company, but also will issue shares that will allow people to invest and buy shares. And that is going to create something amazing in the next decade. So I believe that's one of the largest industries and sectors that we will see. So the equities is the first part. Then you have fixed income. In fixed income, well, what do we have? We have both the public and the private. In the public, we have specifically bonds, which are financial instruments created by governments. The biggest one is the US government. So the US bonds are valuable and everyone has them. The Japanese, the Chinese, the Arabs, they own a lot of public bonds. But also most countries around the world also launch their own bonds. So that's also a very interesting thing because it says, okay, I'm gonna launch that bond for the next 15 years that will allow you to hold it and then I will pay you some money. That's the reason it's called fixed income. But the biggest one is in the private sector. So private credit, the loans that are given, both for commercial but also for individuals. Loans that are given by banks but also by fintechs and also by individuals. So there's a great opportunity there in the fixed income space, specifically in the private sector as well. And then you have cash and cash related instruments, which is the money that is being created by governments. And now you see two trends. The CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, which are the new type of digital currency that will be created. And then you have the stable coins, which are based on crypto technology and are normally pegged to another fiat currency. Right now, most of it is the US dollar, but in the future, that will change. I will see transformation. And then you have fourth, the derivatives market, which is the crazy one. That's where they just create instruments over instruments that have led to financial crisis, but also to a lot of people making a lot of money. So this is the first area, financial. Then you have real assets. And in real assets, you have real estate, which is most of the equity around the world, actually, because it's $300 trillion. It's incredible. So this is going to be transformed because people will be able to buy and sell their houses much faster and at a cheaper pace by using the tokenization technology. Then you have commodities, such as, for example, gold or silver, but also such as soy or rice. And will be connected to agriculture and farms. And how, for example, a farmer in Nicaragua will be able to get additional funding by tokenizing their farm and then allowing investors to inject capital so he can grow that farm. That will be amazing. And then you have other physical, so as for example, people that like to tokenize spirits, whiskey, even beer. This is very interesting. So this is the real assets. Then we're going to the third category, intangible. Well, the key element here is that you have the intellectual property, what is created, the value of the patents, the value of the brands, what we cannot touch, but we know is very valuable. Remember what I always said about Coca-Cola? Very valuable company, specifically their name. Everyone knows the name Coca-Cola. And then you have the alternative investments, which is something that we cannot classify in the other asset types. And why? Well, because they create new types of human interaction. And it started with art. Art at the beginning has been physical, but now we are creating art in a digital way, and some people are combining both elements. But when you have a piece of art, how much is value? That's the interesting thing about art. And the last element is, of course, crypto, which, as you can see, when crypto was imagined, everyone thought in the financial industry that it was just a bubble, that it will not just go anywhere. But we, the techno optimists, all knew the possibilities of creating a new type of asset class. And that's the asset class of crypto. It's not a commodity, it's not an equity, it's not cash, it's not a derivative, so therefore it should not be considered a security. It is its own asset class, and as you may know, Bitcoin now it's its own asset class, and it has been used to create other type of financial instruments. But Bitcoin by itself is a asset class that is different. And then you have Ethereum, and then you have Solana, and the ones that are gonna be created in the next decade. So part of the future, when we're talking about asset tokenization, we have to start from the basics. The basics are understanding what are the key differences, how we can classify the different types of assets, but also what are the tremendous opportunities that will bring to the world. So that's the reason I focus on creating this, and to share with you about the possibilities, and also to help me understand a little bit better why the world is being transformed in such an amazing thing. Thank you very much. Remember, you can subscribe.